Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Form Check Friday. Now this is the series where we take your viewer submitted videos, we put them up on this screen over here, and we critique them. So we try to give our best advice in terms of trying to make lifts more efficient, specifically the power lift, so the squat, bench press, and deadlift. If you're interested in submitting, go ahead and click the video in the description below, and there are some submission guidelines and how to get featured. So we left off with Ashley, the phenomenally strong deadlifter here. Like I said, 390 kilos for a triple, 130 pounds body weight, and she's wondering if maybe her setup could be tighter. So there's a couple things that I would maybe play with for Ashley here. So she obviously has achieved a pretty astounding level of strength and mastery with the deadlift to start off with. So when you're looking at offering tips or coaching for an athlete that's this good, you probably just want to try a couple things, and for the most part, probably keep doing what you're doing. In the email, Ashley was talking a little bit about like maybe pulling the slack out a little bit more, but the one thing that I would maybe recommend is moving this stance a tiny bit narrower, right? So we can see that the shins are kind of tilted inward like this, and I would like to see what would happen if we move the stance just a tiny bit narrower so we have a little more straight up and down shin angle. Now that's not necessarily going to make anything better, but it could have some potential to raise her ceiling in the long term, to allow her to, get even stronger. The other thing is that, yeah, we could probably pull the slack out a little bit better, right? So again, like she seems like a very sort of forceful, like grip and rip kind of puller. So what I would do is I would probably have her start her hips higher, pull the slack out of her back, pull down into the hips, then down into the quads, and try to create a more systematic approach to her setup so that we're a little bit more consistent rep to rep, as opposed to pulling against the bar really hard and violently to, get that. Now, the thing is, if Ashley does this and creates this sort of slower paced setup, takes more time creating tension, it's probably going to feel awful, at least for a bit. So it's probably going to feel slow, it's going to feel much less explosive, and whether or not that hit to how good it feels is worth it, it can be a really tough thing. So what I would do is maybe even program a secondary movement where it's like an intentional deadlift, or like a slow deadlift or something like that, so she can get used to that while not having to sacrifice all of the comp deadlift work that she's doing. So anyways, things do get a lot more sort of intricate and detailed when we get to dealing with stronger, more experienced lifters. So a lot of the times it's programming considerations more so than technical changes. So all right, up next is Nick. Nick is 21 years old. He says he's 6'4", so he figures he's not super well built for squatting, but he'd still like to have a respectable squat, he said. So this is 185 for 2 at about a 9 RPE. He says he's focusing on flattening his arms and shoulder blades, trying to get rid of his, he called it a chicken wing, and trying to get comfortable with squatting to better depth. So I think a lot of things look quite good here. Unfortunately, it's super bright here, so we're having a hard time seeing what's going on with the lower body. At this point, things look quite good to me. I would probably widen this stance out because you're such a long guy, to make getting depth a little bit easier. So I would probably widen the stance out, because we'll see how well you can see it here, but we definitely are seeing a fair bit of movement out of these heels up off the floor in the bottom. And I think a lot of the times with a longer lift or with very long legs, you're a super tall guy, if we widen up, we can limit some of the flexibility demands of getting so deep, and effectively, to some extent, limit the range of motion, or trim it, maybe. It's a better way of saying that. So because we're so long, obviously the hips end up a fair ways back. The bar's really trying to pull you forward. I think you do a good job of kind of fighting against that and keeping everything in line. But we can see it a little more evidently on the second rep. We get pulled forward just a little bit more and have to really kind of fight for that positioning. So I would try wider and see if that makes it more comfortable to get to a good depth like that. But overall, I think you're doing a good job. I think your back's in a decent position. I would maybe play with bar position. Like I would consider playing with a lower bar position. Again, you know, if we have a very long torso, which doesn't look like we have a super long torso, but it can kind of be tough to tell with the proportions. You know, if we can effectively shorten that by an inch or two, maybe that plays into our advantage, right? By moving that bar a slight bit down your back. So something to think about, but overall I would try a wider stance and see if that makes depth a little more comfortable. All right, now we have Kai. So Kai is 17 years old. His 1RM is 135 kilos, and he says the national record is 145 kilos, and he has to the end of the year to try to take a crack at that. So as per usual, everyone who comes to our live streams knows it. Everybody can anticipate what I'm going to say right now. Have you tried widening your grip? Not to say that this doesn't look good or efficient, but in a lot of cases, if we can trim that range of motion by moving the grip out wider, we can potentially move more weight. Again, like I was saying with Ashley though, I wouldn't want you to just go wide. Like, go wide because it's going to be better. That's not really how I work with technique cueing. What I would say is either gradually widen your grip over time by like 1 finger width at a time. If your pinky's on the rings, go to ring fingers on the rings. Try that out for a while. If it feels good, feels better, keep going. Go middle finger on the rings. The other thing I would do is leave your sort of comp bench unchanged, and I would program a wide grip bench as a variation throughout a different part of the week and see if over time that doesn't catch up or overtake your comp bench. In terms of the bench itself, I think we're doing a good job with leg drive. I think we probably are going to want to work on pausing because you did mention a record, so I'm assuming you're going to compete. So we're definitely going to want to work on, okay, you know, can we generate force from a dead stop? Can we make this pause motionless and still generate a good amount of acceleration off the chest? Maybe that's tough with the close grip. Maybe it's not, but maybe it is, right? We also see that the bar is kind of coming out this way because of the aggressiveness of that bounce, right? We're coming down pretty quick. The elbows flare out early, drives the bar out this way. So more control to the chest, press the bar back, and don't let the elbows just, as soon as you touch, go whoop. Because see, this is actually a great angle for this now. So when we're coming down, we want the elbows just, well, see, there's my asymmetries coming out. We want the elbows just in front of the bar so that when we press, that bar naturally is going to come back. If the elbows come out here, what's going to happen? The bar is going to fall this way. The bar is going to go the opposite way that we want it to go. So pull the elbows in so that when you press, the bar comes back up. When we press and the bar goes out, that's when people get really stuck, people miss reps, all that kind of stuff. So that's something to work on. And it may just become more natural and feel better with a wider grip. Again, it's just one of those things. I've seen it enough times to be able to recommend that. You know, probably most people should at least try a wider grip or use it as an alternate movement of some kind. All right, this is Luciano. He's been training 10 years, 3 years consistently. And he says he's stuck at like about a 240 kilo plateau. So he's trying to get his lats feeling like they're contributing to the movement, but he says he can't really feel his lats at all. So yeah, it does look like we're pretty far forward here. So I think in the setup, it's worth practicing pulling into the bar, right? So it's worth practicing this part of the movement right there where you pull in, but then we don't really see any like connection from here to here because this just goes like this, right? So what we want is when you pull into the bar, I want you to think about pulling your shoulder blade down into your butt, because more or less that's kind of what we want, right? We want the lats to pull down here where they connect into a big web of connective tissue right into your lower back. We want those lats to help pull the humerus lower, help depress the shoulder blade, and create more rigidity and stability in the back. So, I mean, there are probably some movements you can do before you do this so you can help kind of like feel your lats more, right? You can do some straight arm pull downs with like a cable row or standing standing cable. Just grab like a straight bar, and just do some pull downs so you can get that feeling of this. Another thing that tends to help people is thinking about external rotation. So if you're grabbing the bar, thinking about rotating out this way, right? Thinking about like pointing your elbows towards the wall behind you in some cases can help, or bending the bar. There's a lot of different cues and ways we can like visualize how this should work. So but yeah, I can see what you're saying, where the lats maybe like are letting you down. Your shoulders are easily getting pulled out of position. The other thing, maybe try some sumo deadlifts, right? If you're feeling plateaued on your conventional, try some sumo for a while. You know, there's a good chance that doing some sumo teaches you some bracing, some cueing, some kinesthetic awareness. So kind of understanding of where your body is in space and how you're moving, that carries over your conventional. Again, I've seen that a lot. The other thing, I mean, obviously, come at it from a programming standpoint. A lot of the times plateaus are not necessarily technique based, right? A lot of the times it has to do with how much training stress we're putting on ourselves. Is it enough? Is it too much? And basically just putting in the work for long enough that we can break these plateaus. Because sometimes it's not even something that we can change. It's just we need to train for another 6 months. And then all of a sudden you put 20 kilos on your squat, or your deadlift, sorry, in this case. But all right. This is Sushant. He's been training 1.5 years. No plans to compete, he says. But there's 110 kilos for a triple, and he says it's around 90%. So let's see. From what I could see, those squats looked exceptional. I'm not a huge fan of the looking up thing, but man, your squat is really good. Yeah, I don't know if I would change a single thing, man. You're maybe a little bit loose in the bottom. So I would maybe think more about like, okay, this is the bottom position of your squat, as opposed to going that extra like half inch where we're starting to lose the back position, right? So I would maybe maintain a little bit more rigid trunk. So maintain a little more tightness in the low back and the abs and the obliques, like brace a little harder. That was a better rep for that. But other than that, man, your squat looks like perfect, right? I don't think there's much that you know, if I was coaching you, I wouldn't recommend you change anything, really. I'd maybe get you to play around with the low bar and see how it felt, but yeah, that's about it, man. Looks really good. All right, and our last lift of the day, this is gonna be Sophie. So Sophie's been lifting for 5 years, focused on strength for just over a year now. And she says that bench is by far her weakest lift. She says inconsistent. Sometimes she gets pain in the front of her shoulder, and she's not sure if she needs to work on position or sort of what it is. But we're gonna leave this video for today, and we're going to ask our community to come forward and try to offer some helpful suggestions for Sophie's bench here. And then I'm going to hop in next week and offer my suggestions and my critique for Sophie. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in today. I want to thank everybody for all the submissions, and make sure to hit that subscribe button for more content like this, and leave a like if you liked it. We'll see everybody in the next one. Take care.